3 knocks. This is a true story. I am not telling you this because I want you to believe me. I am telling you because I need to tell someone. Because if I keep this inside any longer, it will consume me from the inside out, the way fire consumes paper, the way darkness consumes light when you flip the switch. My name is Marcos Aurelio Vega. 3 months ago, I lost my mother. 2 weeks ago, I almost lost my life. And now, sitting here in this small apartment in Monterey with every light turned on and the curtains drawn tight, I am no longer certain that I am still whole. I am no longer certain that the thing I escaped is not still here waiting in the corners where the light does not quite reach. Look at my back. Look at these scars. 5 parallel lines running from my right shoulder blade down to my left hip. Deep grooves carved into my flesh like someone dragged 5 hot knives across my skin. The doctors at Hospital Universitario could not explain them. They said the wounds looked like claw marks from a large animal. A bear, maybe, or a mountain lion. But there are no bears in the cab of a moving truck. There are no mountain lions inside a Kenworth T680, traveling at 80 kilometers per hour through the mountains of San Luis Potosi at 3 in the morning. I will tell you exactly what happened that night. Every second, every minute. And when I'm finished, you will understand why I no longer drive after dark. Why I sleep with every light burning. Why I've covered every mirror in my apartment with black cloth. And why every night at 3 in the morning I still hear the knocking. To understand why I was on that road that night, I need to tell you about my mother. Her name was Elena Vega. She died 3 months ago from cancer. Pancreatic. The doctors found it too late, the way they always seem to find these things too late, and by the time they opened her up and looked inside, there was nothing left to save. She fought for 2 years. 2 years of chemotherapy that made her hair fall out in clumps on her pillow. 2 years of hospital rooms that smelled like bleach and dying flowers. 2 years of bills. When she finally let go and her hand went slack in mine at 4:17 in the morning in a room on the 3rd floor of Hospital Christus Muguerza, she left me 2 things. A photograph of herself as a young woman smiling in a white dress at some party I was never told about. I had taped that photograph to my dashboard 3 years ago when she first got sick, a small ritual to keep her close during the long hauls. And 150,000 pesos in medical debt. My wife, my ex-wife, she left me 2 years before that, right when my mother started getting sick. She said she could not live with a man who loved his mother more than his wife. Maybe she was right. I do not know anymore. I stopped caring about being right around the time I started counting the pills in my mother's orange bottles, wondering how long the morphine would last, wondering if the end would come before the money ran out. So here I was, 38 years old, living alone in a rented apartment that smelled like cigarette smoke from the previous tenant, drowning in debt. And the only thing I knew how to do, the only skill I possessed after 15 years of highways and truck stops and endless white lines disappearing under my wheels, was drive. That is why when my boss at the transport company asked who wanted to take the night run, the run nobody else wanted because it meant crossing the Garganta del Diablo mountain pass at 2 or 3 in the morning, I raised my hand. Night runs paid time and a half. Time and a half meant paying off the debt faster. Paying off the debt faster meant maybe someday sleeping without dreaming of my mother's face in that hospital bed asking me why I let her die surrounded by strangers instead of at home where she belonged. I am not superstitious. I never have been. I do not believe in ghosts or spirits or demons or any of the stories the old drivers tell around truck stop coffee counters at midnight. I believe in money. I believe in work. Those are the only 2 things that have never betrayed me. At least, that is what I believed before that night. Thursday, March 14th. I remember the date because it would have been my mother's birthday. If she had lived, she would have turned 67. I lit a candle for her that morning the way she taught me when I was a boy, and I whispered a prayer I no longer believed into a God I no longer trusted. Then I went to work. I picked up my rig at the company yard in Monterey around 4 in the afternoon. 18 tons of industrial machinery bound for a construction site in Veracruz. 12 hours of driving, maybe 13 if traffic was bad or the mountain pass was foggy. I had made this run dozens of times. I knew every curve, every pothole, every place where the road narrowed and the guardrails disappeared, and the only thing between your wheels and a 300-meter drop was your own concentration. The sky was turning from blue to orange when I pulled out of the yard, the sun hanging low on the horizon like a bloody egg yolk. The air had a smell to it, that particular smell of the Mexican north in March, dust and diesel and smoke from the brush fires burning somewhere to the west. I rolled down my window and let the wind hit my face hot and dry, carrying the taste of the desert. Inside the cab, everything was familiar. The cracked leather seats that had molded themselves to my body over the years. The smell of old coffee and stale cigarette smoke, even though I'd quit smoking 3 years ago when my mother first got diagnosed. Some smells never leave. They soak into the fabric and the metal, and they stay forever like memories you cannot shake no matter how hard you try. And there on the dashboard, my mother's photograph, the edges curling slightly from years of sun exposure, her young face smiling at me the way it always did. I turned on the radio. The dial found a norteño station playing Vicente Fernandez, that old song about the son of the people, the one my mother used to hum while she cooked dinner when I was young. I did not choose that station. The radio found it on its own, pulling the signal out of the airwaves like it knew what I needed to hear. The first 6 hours passed without incident. Good roads, light traffic. I stopped at a gas station near Ciudad Victoria around 10 at night, filled the tank, ate 2 tacos al pastor from a stand run by an old woman who reminded me of my grandmother, drank a cup of coffee so black and thick it could have doubled as motor oil. I walked around the parking lot to stretch my legs, checked my tires, made sure the cargo straps were secure. That was when I met the old man. He was leaning against a white Freightliner on the other side of the lot, smoking a cigarette, his face a road map of wrinkles under the fluorescent lights. I recognized the look. 30 years on the road, maybe more. The kind of man who had seen everything the highways of Mexico had to offer and had somehow survived to tell about it. He looked at me as I walked past, his eyes catching mine, and something in his gaze made me stop. "You going through the Garganta tonight?" he asked. It was not really a question. "Yes," I said, same as always. He took a long drag on his cigarette, the ember glowing orange in the darkness. "Tonight is the full moon. That road is not good on the full moon." I laughed. The kind of laugh you give when you want to show someone you are too smart to believe their superstitious nonsense. "You believe in that stuff, old man." He did not laugh back. He did not even smile. He just looked at me with those clouded eyes, the eyes of someone who had seen things they wished they could forget. "If you hear something on the roof of your truck," he said, "do not stop. If you see something on the side of the road, do not look. And if someone calls your name, even if it sounds like someone you love, do not answer." Then he dropped his cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and walked away without another word. I shook my head and climbed back into my cab. Crazy old man, I told myself. Too many years alone on the road. That is what happens when you spend your whole life talking to nobody but yourself and the static on the radio. I did not know then that those were the last words of warning I would ever receive. 11 o'clock at night. I officially entered the mountain zone. The change was almost immediate. The streetlights disappeared, the houses disappeared. Even the sky seemed to disappear, swallowed by clouds so thick and black that not a single star showed through, even though the old man had said tonight was the full moon. The radio started to crackle. Vicente Fernandez's voice broke apart, replaced by static, that buzzing hiss that sounds like insects dying in the speakers. I turned the dial, searching for another station, but they were all the same. Static. Nothing but static. I turned the radio off. Silence. Not normal silence. This was heavy silence. Thick silence. The kind of silence that feels like pressure on your eardrums, like the air itself is pressing down on you, trying to squeeze something out of your chest. Even the sound of my engine seemed muffled, distant, as if I were hearing it from underwater. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up, displaying two words that made my stomach tighten. Sin servicio. No service. Normal, I told myself. This is normal. The mountains block the signal. This happens every time. But tonight the loss of signal felt different. It was not just my phone losing connection. It was me. I felt cut off, isolated, as if I had driven through some invisible barrier and left the normal world behind, entering a place where the rules I understood no longer applied. I checked the clock on my dashboard. 11:17. I checked the GPS. 127 kilometers until I would be completely out of the mountain zone. I looked around me. Darkness. Nothing but darkness, and the cone of light from my headlights illuminating maybe 50 meters of road ahead before the black swallowed everything else. And then I felt it. The sensation of being watched. Not from behind, not from the sides. From above. I tilted my head back and looked at the ceiling of my cab. Metal and plastic and a few small lights. Nothing else. Nothing that should not be there. You are imagining things, I told myself. You are tired. Your brain is playing tricks. Drink some coffee. I reached for my thermos, the one I had filled at the gas station barely an hour ago, and poured myself a cup. The coffee was ice cold. That was strange. I had just filled it. It should have been steaming hot. But it was cold, dead cold, as if it had been sitting in that thermos for days instead of minutes. I did not think much of it at the time. That was my first mistake. 11:23, the first knock, one sound, a single impact. Like someone had punched the metal roof of my cab with a closed fist. Branch, I told myself immediately. I must have passed under a low tree and a branch fell on the roof. It happens on mountain roads. I checked my mirrors. Nothing behind me. Just the darkness, eating the road as fast as my taillights could illuminate it. I kept driving. 30 seconds later, it came again. 2 knocks this time, spaced exactly half a second apart. Maybe a bird, I thought. A bird flew into the truck. That happens sometimes. Big birds get confused by headlights at night, and they crash into vehicles. But something was wrong. The knocks were too even, too deliberate. Birds do not knock twice with a half-second pause between impacts. Birds do not knock in patterns. I slowed down to 60 kilometers per hour, straining my ears, waiting for more. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes. Nothing. See, I told myself, there is nothing there. You are paranoid because you are exhausted. Drink more coffee. I started to relax. My grip on the steering wheel loosened. My shoulders dropped. I even reached for the radio again, thinking the static might be better than this crushing silence. And then it came. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. A pattern. A rhythm. A sequence that could not be accidental. Someone was knocking on the roof of my truck. Not something. Someone. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. My hands clamped down on the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I watched the speedometer, 60 kilometers per hour. Nothing could hold on to the roof of a moving truck at that speed. Nothing human, anyway. The knocking continued. 3, pause, 3, pause, 3. Like a code. Like a message. Like someone asking a question and waiting for me to respond. I knew I should not stop. The old man's words echoed in my head. If you hear something on the roof of your truck, do not stop. Simple advice, clear advice. Advice that any sane person would follow. But I was not thinking about sanity. I was thinking about safety. If something was on my roof, some object or debris or animal, it could come loose at any moment. It could fly off and hit another vehicle. It could shift my center of gravity on a sharp turn and send me rolling down into the canyon. I needed to check. I needed to know. That was my logic. That was my reasoning. Looking back now, I know it was not logic at all. It was the first step in a trap. I could not see a door I was about to open that I would never be able to close. I found a wide spot at the side of the road, a flat area of dirt about 10 meters across, just enough room for a truck to pull over. No lights, No signs of human habitation. Nothing but darkness and the trees pressing in from both sides like silent witnesses. I stopped the engine, flipped on my hazard lights, left the cab running. The moment my hand touched the door handle, the knocking stopped. Complete silence. The kind of silence that should not exist, not even in the mountains, not even in the middle of the night. No insects, no wind, no distant sound of any living thing. The forest was holding its breath, waiting. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door. The air outside hit me like a wall, cold, so much colder than inside the cab, even though my air conditioning was set to 22 degrees. This was freezer cold, morgue cold, the kind of cold that has nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with something else, something I did not have a name for yet. My breath came out in white clouds, in March, in Mexico, and there was a smell, damp earth, rotting leaves, and underneath that something else, something I could not identify at first, sweet and rotten at the same time, like meat that had been left out too long, like something that had died and was not staying dead. Just a dead animal nearby, I told myself. A deer or a coyote. Nothing to worry about. I stepped away from the cab and aimed my flashlight at the roof. Nothing. Bare metal, clean, empty, not a branch, not a bird, not a single mark to explain what I had heard. I walked around the entire truck, checking every angle, every surface. Tires fine, cargo secure, nothing out of place, nothing that should not be there. You were imagining things, I told myself. Stress, grief, exhaustion. Your mind is playing tricks. I almost believed it. I was about to climb back into my cab and continue driving when I noticed something that made me freeze. The silence had changed. Before it was empty. Now it was full of waiting, full of attention, as if something in the darkness had noticed me, had turned its focus toward me and was watching. And then I heard it, breathing, not my breathing, something else, slow and deep. The sound of something ancient filling its lungs with air, then letting it out again. Measured, patient. It came from above me. From the roof of my cab, I stood there, neck stiff, eyes fixed straight ahead, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run, but my legs would not obey. They felt nailed to the ground, welded to the dirt. The breathing continued, in, out, like someone sleeping, like something waiting to wake up. Very slowly, very carefully, I began to raise my head. And then the voice came. Marcos, it said. My son. It was my mother's voice. My mother who had died 3 months ago. I did not run. I did not scream. I just stood there as the cold wrapped around me and the smell of rot filled my nostrils, and my mother's voice drifted down from the darkness above my head. Come up and see me, she said. I have missed you so much. That was when I broke. I threw myself into the cab, slammed the door so hard the entire truck shook, and jammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine roared. The tires spat gravel. The truck lurched forward into the darkness. Behind me or above me or inside my own skull, I heard laughter, and a voice that was no longer my mother's. You stopped, it said. You looked. And now I have seen you. The truck barreled through the darkness at 90 kilometers per hour, far too fast for a mountain road, far too fast for an 18-ton vehicle carrying industrial machinery, far too fast for anything resembling sanity. But sanity had left me somewhere back at that pullout, standing in the cold with my dead mother's voice floating down from the roof of my cab. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles, bone-white arms trembling. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped animal trying to break free. Sweat poured down my face despite the freezing air that had invaded the cab, dripping into my eyes, blurring my vision. The laughter had stopped. The voice had stopped. But I knew with a certainty that went beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond anything I could explain, that I was not alone. Marcos. There it was again, my mother's voice. But not coming from above this time, coming from everywhere. From the speakers of the dead radio, from the vents of the air conditioning, from the empty passenger seat beside me. My son. Why are you running from me? I did not answer. I remembered the old man's warning. If someone calls your name, do not answer. I clamped my jaw shut so tight my teeth ached and kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead. I just want to talk to you, the voice continued. It had that quality my mother's voice always had, that mixture of warmth and gentle reproach, the tone she used when I had done something wrong and she wanted me to confess without being forced. I have missed you so much. 3 months without seeing my boy. Do you know how lonely it is where I am? The words hit me like physical blows. 3 months. That was exactly how long she had been dead. Exactly how long I had been carrying this weight of guilt, this stone in my chest that grew heavier with each passing day. You were not there, Marcos, when I died. I called for you. I called your name over and over, but you did not come. My hands shook on the wheel. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. That is true, a small voice whispered in the back of my mind. You were on the road. You were always on the road. And when the hospital called, when they said she was fading, you drove as fast as you could, but it was not fast enough. It was never fast enough. I am sorry, Mama, I whispered before I could stop myself. I am so sorry. The moment the words left my lips, I knew I had made a mistake. The old man had said, do not answer, and I had answered. The temperature in the cab dropped another 10 degrees. The windows began to fog from the inside, condensation spreading across the glass like frost creeping across a winter pond. And the voice changed. It was still my mother's voice, still her pitch, her cadence, her way of pronouncing my name. But there was something underneath it now, something cold and hollow and ancient, like an echo bouncing off the walls of an empty tomb. You answered me, it said. And now we can talk, really talk. I reached for my phone. I did not care that there was no signal. I did not care that we were in the middle of the mountains. I needed to hear a human voice, any human voice. I needed to call someone, anyone, to prove to myself that the world I knew still existed. The screen lit up. For one desperate moment, I saw the call button, saw my contact list, saw the numbers of people who might be able to help me. Then the screen flickered. And my mother's face appeared, not a photograph, not a memory. A moving image, her features shifting and writhing on the small screen, her mouth opening and closing, as if she were trying to speak through the glass and silicon and circuitry. Marcos, the phone said in her voice. My son, look at me, look at your mother. I hurled the phone across the cab. It struck the passenger door and clattered to the floor, but the voice did not stop. It kept speaking, kept calling my name, kept begging me to look, to answer, to stop running. The radio. I lunged for the CB radio, the emergency channel that truckers use to communicate with each other across the lonely highways. Someone would be out there. Someone would hear me. I grabbed the handset, pressed the button, and shouted into the microphone. This is Marcos Vega, I yelled. I am on the Garganta Road. I need help. There is something in my truck. Something is following me. Please, if anyone can hear me, respond. Static, the hiss and crackle of empty airwaves, the sound of a universe that had forgotten I existed. Then cutting through the static like a knife through fog, a voice. Not my mother's voice this time. A man's voice. Old, tired. Filled with a despair so deep it made my blood run cold. I hear you, the voice said, broken by bursts of interference. You stopped, you looked, you spoke to it. Yes, I shouted into the handset. Yes, I stopped. I made a mistake. Tell me how to fix it. Tell me what to do. A long pause. Static washing over the silence like waves on a dead shore. There is nothing you can do now. It has marked you. It will follow until it is finished. What is it? I demanded. What the hell is following me? The old man's voice grew fainter as if he were drifting away from me, falling into some abyss that swallowed both sound and hope. It has no name. It has been here since before the road, since before the trucks, since before the people. It waits in the darkness for those who stop, for those who look, for those who open the door. I did not open any door, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I remembered. The moment of panic when I had nearly jumped out of the moving truck. When I had reached for the door handle, ready to flee into the forest, ready to take my chances with whatever might be waiting in the darkness. Had I opened the door, had I cracked it even for a second, when you open it comes in. And once it is in, it stays. The static surged, drowning out the old man's voice. I shouted into the handset, begging him to stay, begging him to tell me more. But there was only the hiss of dead air, the sound of a connection that had never really existed. I threw the handset down and reached for my flashlight. I needed light, more light, any light. The darkness outside was pressing against the windows, pressing against the windshield, trying to get in. I clicked the flashlight on. Nothing happened. I clicked it again. And again. The batteries were fresh. I had replaced them this morning as I did every morning before a long haul. They could not be dead, but they were. The flashlight was nothing but a useless cylinder of plastic and metal in my hand. The cab's overhead light, I reached up and flipped the switch. The light flickered on, off, on, off. Each flash lasting barely a second, just long enough to illuminate the interior of the cab in strobing bursts of sickly yellow light. And in one of those flashes I saw something that made my heart stop. A shape in the passenger seat. A dark mass that had not been there a moment ago hunched and twisted its outline wrong in ways I could not articulate. The light flickered off. When it flickered on again, the seat was empty. But I could smell it now, that rotting smell from outside. It had followed me in. It was here in the cab, sharing this small metal box with me as I hurtled through the mountains at 100 kilometers per hour. Then the overhead light died completely, and I was left with only the glow of the dashboard instruments painting the interior in shades of green and red, turning everything into a hellscape of shadow and sickly luminescence. The voice came again, but it was no longer trying to sound like my mother. It had dropped the pretense, revealing something beneath the mask, something that had never been human. "You are trapped now, Marcos." The words seemed to come from inside my own skull, vibrating through my bones, echoing in the chambers of my heart. "I have entered your space, your air, your vehicle. Every breath you take brings me deeper. Every beat of your heart pulls me closer." I pushed the accelerator harder, as if speed could save me, as if I could outrun something that was already inside. The speedometer climbed. 100, 110, 120. The truck shuddered and groaned, the engine screaming in protest, the cargo shifting dangerously in the trailer behind me. And the thing in my cab laughed. It was not a human laugh. It was not even an animal sound. It was the noise of something that had forgotten what laughter was supposed to mean. Something that had only heard the concept described and was trying to imitate it without understanding. "Faster," it said. "Yes, drive faster. The faster you go, the sooner you will reach me. I do not understand." I gasped. "What do you want? Why are you doing this?" Silence, long and heavy, pressing down on me like a physical weight. Then the voice spoke again, and this time there was something almost like amusement in its tone. "You want to know what I am? You want to understand?" I said nothing. I remembered too late that I was not supposed to engage, not supposed to speak, not supposed to acknowledge. I am the darkness that your ancestors feared. I am the thing that waits at the edge of the firelight. I am every nightmare you have ever had and every nightmare you have not yet dreamed. The air in the cab grew colder. My breath came out in white plumes that hung in the air like ghosts. "This road was built on bones," the voice continued. "Before there were trucks, before there were cars, this was a path the old ones used to carry their dead from the mountain villages to the burial grounds in the valley. Thousands of bodies passed through here over hundreds of years, and some of them did not want to go. I tried to focus on the road, tried to ignore the words worming their way into my brain. They stayed, they waited, and over time they became me. All of them, all their hunger, all their rage, all their loneliness. Compressed into something new, something that waits for travelers who break the rules. What rules, I asked, even though I knew I should not. 3 rules, it said. Do not stop in the darkness. Do not look at what you cannot understand. Do not speak to what speaks to you. My stomach turned to ice. You broke all 3 Marcos. In the space of 5 minutes you broke all 3, and now you belong to me. I do not belong to anyone, I snarled, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. I do not believe in you. You are not real. You are a hallucination, a product of grief and exhaustion and too many hours on the road. The thing laughed again, that horrible imitation of human mirth. Then explain the cold, explain the smell. Explain why your flashlight died and your phone speaks with your mother's voice. As if to demonstrate its power, the headlights of my truck suddenly cut out. One moment I could see the road ahead, the yellow lines, the curve of the asphalt, the guardrail separating me from the abyss. The next moment, nothing. Absolute blackness. I was driving blind at 100 kilometers per hour with an 18-ton load pushing me forward. I slammed on the brakes. The truck shuddered, the tires screaming against the pavement, the trailer fishtailing behind me. For one eternal second, I was certain I was going to die, certain the truck was going to jackknife and roll and send me tumbling down into the canyon where they would find my body, weeks later picked clean by scavengers. But the truck stopped. Somehow, against all odds, it stopped on the road, pointing in the right direction, still on the asphalt. And the headlights came back on. I sat there gasping, shaking my hands, trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. The road ahead was clear, no obstacles, no danger, nothing but the empty highway stretching into the darkness. You see, the voice said, I control everything here, the lights, the air, the road itself. I could send you over the edge whenever I choose, but I'm not ready yet. I want to enjoy this first. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to open the door and run into the forest and take my chances with whatever else might be waiting out there. But I knew with the same certainty that I knew my own name that there were things in the forest. I had seen them earlier when I had almost fled the cab. Shapes standing among the trees, eyes glowing in the darkness, waiting for me to step outside. I was trapped. In the truck, I was trapped with the thing. Outside the truck, I was trapped with the others. There was nowhere to go, nothing to do but keep driving and hope that somehow, somewhere, there was a way out. I checked the GPS. The numbers glowed on the screen, indifferent to my terror. Distance to nearest gas station, 47 kilometers. Still 80 kilometers after that before I would be completely out of the mountain zone. But the gas station meant light. Light meant people. People meant safety. Or so I hoped. 47 kilometers. At normal speed, that was maybe 40 minutes. 40 minutes of driving with this thing in my cab, breathing down my neck, whispering in my skull. I pressed the accelerator and started moving again. The thing did not try to stop me. It seemed content to let me drive, to let me believe I was making progress, moving toward safety. But it was not finished with me. Not by a long way. The radio turned on by itself, not static this time, music. A song I recognized instantly, the melody burned into my memory from 1,000 childhood evenings. El Hijo del Pueblo, Vicente Fernandez, my mother's favorite. But the lyrics were wrong. The voice was Vicente Fernandez's, that unmistakable velvet baritone, but the words coming out of the speakers were not the words of the song. Marcos, the radio sang. Marcos, Marcos, your mother is waiting. Your mother is here. She will be with you forever and ever. I reached for the radio dial, trying to turn it off. The knob would not move. I grabbed the power cord, trying to yank it free. The cord held fast as if welded in place. The song continued looping endlessly, the same sick parody of my mother's favorite music filling the cab with its malevolence. "Stop it!" I shouted. "Stop it now!" Why, the voice asked, separate from the radio, coming from somewhere behind me. "Do you not like this song? Your mother loved it. She hummed it while she cooked. She sang it to you when you were a baby. Do you not remember?" "I remember," I said through gritted teeth. "And that is why I know you are not her. She would never use that song to hurt me." The radio fell silent. The sudden absence of sound was almost worse than the music, a void that pressed against my eardrums like deep water. Then the voice spoke again, and this time there was no pretense of humanity left in it, no imitation of my mother, no false warmth or manufactured grief. You are right, it said. I am not your mother, but I know her. I know everything about her, her voice, her memories, her love for you. Her disappointment. Disappointment. She was disappointed in you, Marcos. Did you not know all those years you spent on the road instead of with her? All those birthdays you missed, all those holidays you spent in truck stops instead of at her table. That is not true, I said, but my voice wavered. It is true. You know it is true. You tell yourself that you worked to support her, that the money you sent home was enough, but it was not. What she wanted was you, your time, your presence, your love. The cold in the cab intensified. Frost began to form on the inside of the windows, crystalline patterns spreading across the glass. And in the end, she died alone, in a hospital bed surrounded by strangers, calling your name, waiting for you to come. The tears I'd been holding back finally broke free. They streamed down my face, hot against my frozen skin, blurring my vision. She called for you until her last breath. Marcos, Marcos. Where is my son? Why is he not here? Stop, I whispered. But you were on the road. You were always on the road. And by the time you arrived, she was already cold. Stop! The word tore out of me like a physical thing, raw and ragged and soaked in pain. I slammed my palm against the steering wheel once, twice, 3 times, the impact sending shock waves of pain up my arm. Silence, complete and total. For a moment I thought maybe I had done something, maybe my outburst had driven the thing away. Maybe there was power in defiance after all. Then I felt something touch me, a hand, pressing against my back, right between my shoulder blades. The touch was cold, so cold it burned. I could feel each individual finger, the pressure of the palm, the unmistakable sensation of skin against skin, even through my shirt. And then the hand began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it slid across my back. The fingers curled the nails, no, not nails, claws, something sharp and hard and inhuman pressing against the fabric of my shirt. Poor Marcos, the voice whispered. And now it was right behind me, right next to my ear, so close I could feel the cold breath on my neck. You have carried so much guilt, so much pain. Let me help you. Let me take it away. The claws pressed harder. I felt my shirt begin to tear. All you have to do is stop fighting, the voice continued. Stop running. Stop struggling. Let me in completely and the pain will end, I promise. I felt the first sting of penetration as the claws broke through the fabric and touched my skin. Cold. So cold it was hot, like being touched by dry ice. No, I said. The word came out as a croak, barely audible. No, I am not giving up. I am not letting you in. You want me, you will have to take me, and I will fight you every step of the way. The claws dug in, deep. I felt the skin part, felt the muscle underneath tear, felt the hot rush of blood begin to flow down my back. I screamed. The sound filled the cab, bouncing off the metal walls, drowning out everything else. The pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a searing agony that seemed to split my body in two. But I did not let go of the wheel. I did not take my foot off the accelerator. I kept driving, kept pushing forward, kept fighting. The claws raked downward. 5 parallel lines of fire carved into my flesh from my right shoulder to my left hip. I could feel my shirt growing wet with blood, could smell the copper tang mixing with the rot and the cold. Fight all you want, the voice said, and there was something new in its tone. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. You will still be mine in the end. The hand withdrew. The cold presence behind me receded, moving back into the shadows of the cab's sleeping compartment. I slumped forward, gasping tears and sweat and blood mixing on my skin. The wounds on my back throbbed with every heartbeat, a rhythm of pain that seemed to pulse in time with the engine. But I was still alive, still moving, still fighting. The GPS beeped softly. I forced my eyes to focus on the screen. Distance to nearest gas station, 38 kilometers. 38 kilometers. I had covered 9 kilometers while that thing was inside my head, while it was carving its signature into my flesh. 38 more kilometers. Maybe 35 minutes at this speed. I could do this. I had to do this. In the darkness behind me, something stirred. The presence was still there, watching, waiting. It had tasted my blood. It had marked me. And it was not finished. That was just a greeting, the voice said, a taste of what is to come. When you run out of road, when the lights fail, when there is nowhere left to go, I will show you what I am truly capable of. I said nothing. I gripped the wheel with blood-slicked hands and kept my eyes on the road. The game had changed. This was no longer about escape. This was about survival. And I had 38 kilometers to figure out how to win. Behind me, in the darkness of the sleeping compartment, the thing that had taken my mother's voice began to laugh. Soft at first, then louder, building into a cacophony of sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. And mixed in with that laughter so faint I might have imagined it, I heard another sound. The sound of something beginning to move, something crawling forward, coming for me. The blood running down my back had begun to cool, turning from warm and wet to cold and sticky against my skin. Each breath sent a fresh wave of pain radiating outward from the wound's 5 parallel lines of fire carved into my flesh by something that should not exist. The fabric of my shirt clung to the torn skin, pulling at the edges of the cuts every time I moved, every time I shifted my grip on the steering wheel. I could feel my strength fading. The blood loss was not severe enough to kill me, not yet, but it was enough to make my head swim, enough to blur the edges of my vision, enough to make the road ahead seem like a ribbon of gray threading through an infinite sea of black. The thing wearing my mother's face had not moved for the past 10 minutes. It sat perfectly still in the passenger seat, hands folded, eyes forward, like a mannequin dressed in human skin. But I could feel its attention on me, a weight pressing against the side of my head, watching, waiting, measuring how much fight I had left. The GPS showed 24 kilometers to the gas station, 24 kilometers of darkness, 24 kilometers of pain. You are weakening, the thing said without turning its head. I can smell it, the fear in your sweat. The exhaustion in your blood. You cannot keep this up much longer. I said nothing. Speaking took energy I did not have. Do you know what happens when a body loses too much blood? The voice was conversational, almost friendly, as if we were discussing the weather instead of my impending death. First comes the dizziness, then the confusion, then the loss of motor control. Your hands will start to shake, your vision will narrow, and eventually you will lose consciousness. The thing finally turned to look at me, and I saw my mother's face twisted into an expression she had never worn in life, a mixture of anticipation and hunger that made my stomach turn. When that happens, when your hands slip from the wheel and your foot falls off the accelerator, I will be here, waiting. And then we will have all the time in the world. I forced myself to focus on the road, on the white lines, on the simple act of keeping the truck between the guardrails. 24 kilometers. I could do 24 kilometers. You keep telling yourself that the thing said as if reading my thoughts. But we both know the truth. You are not going to make it. The entity moved. One moment it was sitting in the passenger seat, motionless and patient. The next moment it was gone. The seat empty, the imprint of my mother's body still visible in the worn leather. I did not see it move. I did not hear it move. It simply ceased to be in one place and began to be somewhere else. The first indication of where it had gone was the sound. A soft rustling from behind me from the sleeping compartment at the back of the cab. The space where long-haul truckers sometimes napped between shifts, a narrow bed barely wide enough for a grown man to lie down. Marcos. The voice came from back there now, muffled slightly by the curtain that separated the driving area from the sleeping space. Come find me, Marcos. Come play with your mother. I kept my eyes on the road. I did not turn around. I did not respond. The rustling grew louder. Movement in the darkness behind me, something shifting and settling and moving again. Then silence. Complete and total silence, so sudden and absolute that it seemed to have physical presence pressing against my eardrums like deep water. Where are you, Marcos? The voice came from my left now, from somewhere near the driver's side door. But there was nothing there, nothing I could see in my peripheral vision. I am getting closer, now from my right, from the passenger seat that had been empty a moment ago. Warmer. From above me. From the ceiling of the cab directly over my head. Warmer. From behind me again, closer this time, so close I could feel the cold radiating against the back of my neck. Hot. And then hands closed around my throat. Not my mother's hands, not anymore. These were wrong, too long, too many joints, the fingers wrapping around my neck once, twice, 3 times, like the coils of a snake. The skin was cold and dry and rough, like touching a corpse that had been left out in the desert sun. I gagged my windpipe, constricting my lungs, screaming for air. My hands left the wheel, clawing at the fingers around my throat, but they would not budge. They were strong, impossibly strong, squeezing tighter with each passing second. "Found you," the voice whispered directly into my ear. The words were accompanied by a breath so cold it burned, so foul it made my eyes water. The truck began to drift. Without my hands on the wheel, it started to veer slowly toward the right, toward the guardrail, toward the 300-meter drop into the canyon below. Black spots appeared in my vision. My lungs burned. My fingers scrabbled uselessly against the hands around my throat. This is how it ends, Marcos. This is how they all end. Fighting until the last moment, struggling until the last breath. But it always ends the same way. The guardrail was getting closer. I could see it in my peripheral vision, the metal barrier rushing toward us, the only thing standing between my truck and the void. 5 seconds, maybe less. With the last of my strength, I stopped clawing at the hands around my throat. Instead, I reached for the steering wheel, grabbed it with both hands, and yanked it hard to the left. The truck lurched. The tires screamed against the asphalt. The hands around my throat loosened for just a moment, surprised by the sudden movement. It was enough. I sucked in a desperate breath, filling my lungs with air, and then I screamed. Not a word, not a prayer, just a scream raw and primal, a sound that came from somewhere deeper than thought, somewhere older than language. The sound of an animal refusing to die. The hands released me. I grabbed the wheel and corrected the truck's course, pulling it back onto the road, away from the guardrail, away from the drop. My throat burned. My vision was still spotted with black. But I was alive. Behind me, I heard laughter. "Good," the voice said. "Very good. You are stronger than most. This will be more entertaining than I expected." I coughed, my throat raw and aching. When I spoke, my voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" The laughter faded. When the voice returned, it was different, older, deeper, as if something ancient had woken up behind my mother's stolen face. "I told you before, I have no name. I have been here since before names existed, since before language, since before the first human drew breath on this earth." The cold in the cab intensified. Frost spread across the windows, across the dashboard, across the back of my hands, where they gripped the steering wheel. This road was a path of the dead long before it was paved with asphalt. The old ones used it to carry their ancestors from the mountain villages to the burial grounds in the valley below. They walked this road for 1,000 years, and with each passing they left something behind. Fear, grief, the desperate hope that death was not the end. The voice seemed to come from everywhere now, from the speakers and the vents and the very metal of the truck itself. All of that accumulated over the centuries. Layer upon layer of human misery soaking into the stones, seeping into the earth, and eventually it became aware, it became me. I swallowed hard, my throat protesting the movement. "Why do you need me? What do you want?" "I want what all things want. To grow, to spread, to become more than what I am. Each person I take becomes part of me, their memories, their fears, their loves and hates and secret shames. I consume them, and in consuming them I become stronger." The frost on the windows began to form patterns, faces, dozens of faces pressed against the glass from the outside, mouths open in silent screams, eyes empty and hollow. "Look at them," the voice said. "All the ones who came before you, all the ones who stopped on this road, who looked into the darkness, who opened doors that should have remained closed. I recognize some of the faces. Not specifically, not individually, but the type. Truckers like me, travelers, people who had made the same mistake I had made, who had stopped when they should have kept driving, who had looked when they should have kept their eyes forward. They are part of me now. Their voices join my voice. Their hunger feeds my hunger. And soon, Marcos Aurelio Vega, you will join them? I looked at the GPS. 19 kilometers to the gas station. 19 kilometers. I pressed the accelerator harder. You still think you can escape, the voice said. And there was something almost like admiration in its tone. You still think that if you can just reach the light, you will be safe. The faces in the frost began to move their mouths, opening and closing, their empty eyes tracking my movements. Let me show you something, Marcos. Let me show you what you are really running from. The headlights of my truck flared, suddenly blazing brighter than they had any right to, brighter than any headlights I had ever seen. The light was so intense it was almost blinding, turning the road ahead into a river of white fire. And then the light did something impossible. It reflected. There was nothing in front of me. No mirror, no surface, nothing that should have bounced the light back. But the light reflected anyway, curving back toward the windshield, illuminating the glass from the outside. And in that reflection, I saw it. The thing on the roof of my cab. It was crouched there directly above the windshield, its body bent at angles that no human body could achieve. Its skin was gray-black, the color of a corpse, left too long in stagnant water, stretched tight over bones that were too long, too sharp, too numerous. Its arms hung down past its knees, even in that crouched position, ending in hands with too many fingers, each finger tipped with a claw that gleamed like black glass. Its torso was emaciated, the ribs visible beneath the paper-thin skin, the spine protruding in a ridge of bony knobs. But the face was the worst. It had no face. Or rather, it had the space where a face should be, a smooth expanse of gray skin, broken only by two dark pits where eyes should have been. No nose, no mouth, just those two black holes, deep and empty and somehow still staring directly at me. And then the mouth opened, not where a mouth should be. The entire lower half of the face split apart, the skin tearing like wet paper, revealing a cavity filled with teeth. Hundreds of teeth, thousands of teeth, small and sharp and black, layered on top of each other, like scales extending back into a throat that seemed to go down forever. I screamed. The sound tore out of me without thought, without intention, a pure expression of primal terror that filled the cab and bounced off the windows and seemed to go on forever. The thing on the roof tilted its head, the movement jerky and insectile, and the hole that served as its mouth stretched wider. It was smiling. Now you see, the voice said, and it came from the mouth of that thing, from the endless throat lined with endless teeth. Now you understand what you have invited in, what you have allowed to see you. The reflection vanished. The headlights returned to normal. The road ahead was just road again, empty and dark and stretching toward a horizon I might never reach. But the image was burned into my mind. That face, that mouth, those teeth. I would see them every time I closed my eyes for the rest of my life, however long that might be. 17 kilometers to the gas station. The numbers on the GPS seemed to mock me, counting down the distance to a salvation that felt more impossible with each passing minute. My phone buzzed. The sound made me jump, my nerves so raw that even a familiar noise felt like an attack. The phone was still on the floor where I had thrown it earlier, still displaying my mother's face on its cracked screen. But now there was something else. A notification, a text message, from a number I knew by heart, a number that had been disconnected 3 months ago. Mom. I stared at the notification, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It was not possible. The number was dead. The account was closed. There was no way anyone could be sending messages from that phone. But the notification was there, glowing softly in the darkness, waiting for me to read it. Pick it up, the voice said. It was coming from everywhere again, from the speakers and the vents and the very air I breathed. See what your mother has to say. I should not have done it. I knew I should not have done it. But the need to know was stronger than the fear, stronger than the logic, stronger than everything I had learned in the past few hours about the danger of engaging with this thing. I reached down and picked up the phone. The message was simple, just a few words glowing on the cracked screen. "Look out your window, my son." I looked, and my mother looked back. She was standing on the road beside my truck, keeping pace with me somehow, even though I was traveling at 90 kilometers per hour. Her feet did not touch the ground. She floated there, her blue nightgown billowing in an unfelt wind, her face pressed close to the glass. But it was not the face I remembered. Not anymore. The skin was gray and sagging, pulling away from the bones beneath. The eyes were sunken deep into their sockets, surrounded by rings of black bruising. The lips had drawn back from the teeth, revealing gums that were dark and rotting. And the teeth themselves were wrong. Too many, too sharp, layered on top of each other like the teeth of the thing I had seen in the reflection. She smiled at me with that mouth full of impossible teeth, and then she raised her hand, the hand that had stroked my hair when I was a child, the hand that had held mine when I was afraid, and she pressed it against the glass. The window cracked, not shattered, just cracked, a web of fractures spreading outward from where her palm touched the glass, the sound like ice breaking on a frozen lake. "I miss you," the phone said, another message appearing even though I had not looked away from the window. "Why do you not come outside and give your mother a hug?" The thing that looked like my mother pressed harder. The crack spread wider. The glass began to bow inward, bulging under a pressure that should not have been possible. "Just a hug, Marcos." "Is that so much to ask after everything I did for you, after I gave you life, raised you, loved you? All I want is one hug." The glass was going to break. I could see it, could hear it, the groaning of the material as it reached its breaking point. And when it broke, when that thing got inside, when those hands that were no longer my mother's hands closed around me, it would be over. I jerked the wheel to the left, swerving hard, putting distance between my truck and the thing floating alongside it. The thing that looked like my mother did not follow. I saw it in my mirror, standing in the middle of the road behind me, growing smaller as I drove away, just standing there, watching me go. Then the phone buzzed again. "You think distance will save you?" And again, "You think light will protect you?" And again, "You are wrong." And again, "I have already found a way in." And again, "Look in the mirror." I looked, the rear view mirror. The small rectangle of glass that showed the interior of the cab behind me. Something was there, in the sleeping compartment, in the darkness beyond the curtain. A shape, a face, 2 points of light that might have been eyes watching me from the shadows. I tore my gaze away, looked back at the road, tried to breathe. The phone kept buzzing, message after message filling the screen faster than I could read them. "I have touched your blood. I have breathed your air. I have tasted your fear. We are connected now. You cannot throw that away." I threw the phone out the window anyway. I rolled down the glass, grabbed the phone, and hurled it into the darkness. It disappeared instantly, swallowed by the night, taking its glowing screen and its impossible messages with it. But even as it vanished, I could still hear the words. Not from the phone, from inside my own head. From the thing that had found a way into my skull when I was not paying attention. "You cannot throw me away that easily. We are bound now, and I will be with you until the end. 12 kilometers to the gas station." The numbers seemed to taunt me, promising a salvation that grew more distant with every passing second. My hands were shaking on the wheel. My back was on fire, the wounds reopening with each movement, fresh blood soaking through my already ruined shirt. My throat ached where those impossible hands had squeezed, and every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. I was not going to make it. The thought arrived fully formed, a cold certainty that settled into my bones and refused to leave. I was too weak, too hurt, too far gone. The thing was inside me, around me, everywhere at once. There was no escape. There was no hope. There was only the slow approach of an ending I could not prevent. Just give up. The voice whispered. It was gentle now, almost kind, the way my mother used to sound when she was trying to comfort me after a nightmare. "You have fought so hard, Marcos. You have been so brave. But it is over now. Let go. Stop fighting. I promise it will not hurt. I promise you will finally find peace." Peace. The word echoed in my mind, and for a moment, just a moment, I let myself imagine what it would feel like. No more pain. No more fear. No more guilt about my mother. No more loneliness. No more endless highways stretching toward a future that held nothing but more of the same. Just peace, just silence, just an end. My foot eased off the accelerator. The truck began to slow. "That is right," the voice said. "Just let go. Stop fighting. It will all be over soon." The speedometer dropped. 90, 80, 70. The darkness outside seemed to press closer, eager and hungry. I could feel the thing behind me moving forward, rising from the shadows of the sleeping compartment, reaching out with hands that were no longer human. Just a little more, Marcos. Just a little more, and the pain will stop. My eyes started to close. The road ahead blurred into gray abstraction. The wheel began to slip from my fingers. And then I saw it. The photograph. It was still there, taped to the dashboard where I had put it 3 years ago. A small square of faded paper curling at the edges, showing a young woman in a white dress smiling at something outside the frame. My mother. Not the thing that wore her face, not the monster that used her voice. My real mother. The woman who had raised me, who had loved me, who had believed in me even when I did not believe in myself. I remembered her voice, her real voice. Not the cold imitation the thing used, but the warm sound. I had grown up with the voice that had sung me to sleep and told me stories and whispered that everything would be all right. "You are stronger than you know, Marcos," she had told me once when I was a boy, when I was afraid of something I could not name. "The darkness seems powerful, but it is only powerful if you let it be. Light is stronger, love is stronger, and you, my son, you have both." The memory hit me like a physical force pushing back against the fog that had settled over my mind. My mother would not want me to give up. My real mother. The woman who had fought cancer for 2 years, who had endured pain and fear and indignity, and never once complained, who had smiled at me from her hospital bed even when she knew she was dying. She had not given up. Not until her last breath, not until there was literally no more fight left in her. And I would not dishonor her memory by surrendering to this thing that wore her face like a mask. No. The word came out as a whisper, barely audible even to my own ears. No. Louder this time. Stronger. My hands tightened on the wheel. My foot pressed down on the accelerator. "No!" I screamed the word, screamed it. With everything I had left, screamed it into the darkness and the cold and the face of the thing that wanted to consume me. "You are not my mother. You are not her voice. You are not her love. You are nothing but a parasite feeding on grief and fear, and I will not let you have me." The truck surged forward. The speedometer climbed. 90, 100, 110. Behind me, I heard a sound that might have been a scream of rage. "You think you can resist me?" The voice howled, no longer gentle, no longer kind. "You think your pathetic human will is strong enough to stand against something that has existed for millennia?" I did not answer. I just drove. Faster and faster, the truck shuddering around me, the engine roaring its defiance. "You will pay for this, Marcos. You will suffer in ways you cannot imagine. I will tear your soul apart piece by piece and make you beg for the mercy of oblivion. Let me show you what I can do." The attack came from everywhere at once. Hands. Dozens of hands erupting from the darkness of the sleeping compartment, from the shadows under the dashboard, from the spaces between the seats. Cold gray hands with too many fingers and claws, like black glass, reaching for me, grabbing at me, trying to pull me apart. They seized my arms, my legs, my throat. They dug into the wounds on my back, sending fresh waves of agony through my body. They clawed at my face, leaving trails of fire across my cheeks, my forehead, my lips. I screamed. I could not help it. The pain was beyond anything I had ever experienced, beyond anything I had imagined possible. It felt like being torn apart by a pack of wolves, like being burned alive from the inside out. But I did not let go of the wheel. I held on with everything I had, my fingers locked around the leather, my arms straining against the hands that tried to pull them away. Blood ran down my face into my eyes, blinding me. Blood soaked through my clothes, pooling on the seat beneath me. Every breath was agony. Every heartbeat was a battle. "Give up," the voice screamed. "Give up now." I looked through the blood and the tears and the darkness, and I saw something that made my heart soar. Light. Ahead of me, maybe 500 meters. The bright white glow of a gas station blazing like a beacon in the endless night. "No," the voice shrieked. "No, no, no." The hands pulled harder. The claws dug deeper. I felt something tear in my shoulder, felt my grip start to slip. 300 meters. "Stop, stop now. I command you to stop." 200 meters. "You will not reach it. You will fail. You will be mine." 100 meters. The hands were everywhere now, covering my body like a second skin, pulling and tearing and ripping. I could barely see. I could barely breathe. I could barely think. But I could still drive. 50 meters. With a final scream of defiance, I aimed the truck at the brightest light I could see and pressed the accelerator to the floor. The truck roared into the gas station like a wounded animal seeking sanctuary. The tires shrieked against the concrete. The engine howled. The world outside became a blur of light and color and motion. And then, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, the hands were gone. All of them. Every cold finger, every black claw, every impossible limb that had been tearing at my flesh. Gone. Vanished. As if they had never existed. I slammed on the brakes. The truck shuddered to a stop in the middle of the gas station parking lot, surrounded by light, by people, by the blessed mundane reality of the normal world. I sat there for a long moment, gasping, bleeding, trying to understand what had happened. The cab was empty. No creature in the passenger seat. No hands emerging from the shadows. No face pressed against the windows. No voice whispering in my skull. Just me, alone. Surrounded by the fluorescent glow of the gas station lights. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, covered in blood, some of it mine, some of it I could not think about what else it might be. My shirt was in tatters. My skin was a road map of cuts and scratches, and the deep parallel gouges on my back. But I was alive. I had made it. The door of the gas station opened and a young man in a company uniform came running out, his face pale with shock. "Sir, are you okay? Do you need an ambulance?" I tried to answer, but my voice would not work. I just sat there staring at him, at the lights, at the beautiful ordinary world that I had never appreciated before. "Sir, you are bleeding." "A lot. I am calling an ambulance." He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I heard his voice as if from a great distance, reporting an emergency, giving the address, describing my condition. Other people were gathering now. Other truckers, other travelers drawn by the commotion. They stood in a loose circle around my truck, staring, whispering, pointing at the blood on the windows and the claw marks on the door. I did not care. Let them stare. Let them wonder. I was alive. I was in the light, and for this moment, for this one precious moment, I was safe. The silence pressed down on me like a physical weight. Not the hungry silence of the mountain road, not the suffocating silence of the darkness. This was different. This was the silence of aftermath. The silence of a battle ended a war, concluded a storm past. I sat in my ruined cab as the paramedics arrived, as they pulled me from the truck and laid me on a stretcher, as they cut away my shredded shirt and started treating my wounds. I answered their questions in monosyllables. Yes, I was conscious. Yes, I knew my name. No, I did not know what had attacked me. An animal, one of them suggested. Maybe a mountain lion got into your cab somehow. I did not correct him. What would I say that a thing older than language had tried to drag me into eternal darkness, that my dead mother had pressed her face against my window and asked me for a hug, that I had spent the past 2 hours fighting for my soul against something that fed on human fear and pain? They would think I was crazy. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe this whole night had been some kind of psychotic break, a grief-induced hallucination that had somehow manifested physical wounds. But I knew better. Deep down in the part of me that the thing had touched, I knew that what I had experienced was real as the cuts on my back, as real as the bruises on my throat, as real as the cold that still lingered in my bones even under the warm lights of the gas station. They loaded me into the ambulance. The doors closed. The siren started to wail. And as we pulled away from the gas station, as the lights began to fade behind us, I looked out the small window in the back of the ambulance. The darkness was still there, waiting at the edge of the light, patient, eternal. And just for a moment, just before we turned a corner and the gas station disappeared from view, I saw something standing at the edge of the light. A figure in a blue nightgown, watching me go, smiling with a mouthful of impossible teeth. But that was not what made my blood turn to ice. What made my blood turn to ice was the reflection in the ambulance window, my own face staring back at me from the dark glass, smiling, even though I was not smiling at all. 3 weeks have passed since that night. The wounds on my back have healed, or at least the physical part of them is healed. The doctors at Hospital Universitario did what they could, stitching the deepest cuts, bandaging the rest, pumping me full of antibiotics to prevent infection. They asked questions I could not answer, made notes I never saw, and eventually discharged me with a bottle of pain pills and a recommendation to see a psychiatrist. I did not see a psychiatrist. What would I tell them? That a monster wearing my dead mother's face tried to drag me into some kind of eternal darkness, that I spent 2 hours fighting for my life against something that should not exist. They would lock me up. They would pump me full of different pills, the kind that make you forget, the kind that turn the world soft and gray and meaningless. I do not want to forget. Forgetting would be dangerous. Forgetting would mean letting my guard down. And I cannot afford to let my guard down, not anymore. Not ever again. So I stay in my apartment in Monterey with every light burning day and night, with the curtains drawn tight against the darkness outside. I do not drive. I do not work. I live off the small amount of savings I had managed to accumulate before that night, watching the numbers in my bank account shrink a little more each day, knowing that eventually I will have to go back out there, back onto the roads, back into the darkness. But not yet. Not until I am stronger. Not until I am sure. The problem is, I am not sure I will ever be sure again. Every night I wake up at exactly 3 in the morning, not 3:01, not 2:59, 3 o'clock on the dot, as if some internal alarm has been set that I cannot turn off. I wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding my throat raw from screams I do not remember making. And every night when I wake up, something in my apartment has moved. Small things at first. A cup on the kitchen counter shifted 2 inches to the left. A chair pulled slightly away from the table. The bathroom door, which I always leave closed, standing open just a crack. I tell myself I am doing these things in my sleep. Sleepwalking. Rearranging objects without conscious awareness. It is a common phenomenon, especially in people who have experienced trauma. The mind processes fear in strange ways when the body is at rest. That is what I tell myself. That is what I repeat like a prayer, like a mantra, like a shield against the truth I do not want to face. But I know better. Deep in the part of me that the thing touched, the part that will never be clean again, I know that I am not the one moving those objects. Something else is. Last night was different. Last night I did not just wake up at 3 in the morning. Last night I heard something. Knocking. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. The same pattern from the road. The same rhythm that had started everything that had made me pull over and step out of my truck and look up at the darkness above my head. It was coming from the ceiling of my bedroom. I lay there in my bed, frozen, staring up at the white plaster above me, listening to that sound repeat over and over. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. And then, just before dawn, just before the first gray light began to seep through the curtains, I heard something else. A voice. My mother's voice. Pronto, mi hijo. Pronto. Soon, my son. Soon. I did not sleep again after that. I sat in the corner of my bedroom with every light on, watching the ceiling, waiting for something to break through, waiting for hands to emerge from the plaster and reach for me. Nothing happened. The sun came up, the knocking stopped, the voice faded, but I knew it would be back. It always comes back. This morning I made a decision. I needed to see myself, really see myself. I needed to look in a mirror and confirm that I was still me, that the thing had not hollowed me out and replaced me with something wearing my face the way it had worn my mother's face. I had covered all the mirrors in my apartment with black cloth on the first day I came home from the hospital. I do not remember doing it, but I must have, because when I woke up that first morning, every reflective surface in my home was shrouded in darkness. This morning, I uncovered the mirror in my bathroom. The face that looked back at me was mine. The same face I had seen every day for 38 years. The same dark eyes, the same stubble on my jaw, the same scar above my left eyebrow from a childhood fall. But something was wrong. I could not identify it at first. It was subtle, a feeling more than a visible flaw, like looking at a photograph that has been altered in some imperceptible way. Then I realized what it was. I was not smiling. My face, my real face, the face attached to my skull and controlled by my muscles, was set in an expression of exhaustion and fear. My lips were pressed together, my brow was furrowed, my eyes were wide and anxious. But the face in the mirror was smiling, not a big smile, not an obvious grin, just the faintest upturn at the corners of the lips, the slightest crinkling around the eyes. The kind of smile you might not notice if you were not looking for it. I leaned closer to the mirror, my breath fogging the glass. The reflection leaned closer too, matching my movement exactly. But the smile remained, growing wider as I watched. I raised my hand, the reflection raised its hand. I touched my face, the reflection touched its face. I opened my mouth to speak, the reflection opened its mouth. But the words that came out were not mine. I told you, the reflection said. I told you I would be with you until the end. The voice was wrong. It was my voice, but filtered through something cold and ancient, something that had learned to imitate human speech without understanding what it meant. I stumbled backward, nearly falling into the bathtub. The reflection did not stumble. It stayed where it was, pressed against the glass, smiling that terrible smile. And then it did something that made my heart stop. It raised its hand not in mimicry, but independently. It raised its hand and pressed its palm against the inside of the mirror, as if the glass were a window and it were trying to push through. You thought you escaped, Marcos, the reflection said. You thought the light would save you. But I have become part of you now. Every time you look in a mirror, every time you see your reflection in a window or a puddle or the screen of your phone, you will see me looking back. We are one now. The glass began to crack. Thin lines spreading outward from where the reflection's palm pressed against the surface, the sound of something breaking that should not have been able to break. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a heavy ceramic soap dish, and I threw it at the mirror. The glass shattered. Shards exploded across the bathroom, bouncing off the walls, skittering across the floor. I threw my arms up to protect my face, felt the sting of small cuts opening on my hands and forearms. When I lowered my arms, when I opened my eyes, the mirror was gone. Just an empty frame hanging on the wall, surrounded by glittering fragments. But in every fragment, in every shard of broken glass scattered across my bathroom floor, I could see my reflection. Dozens of tiny faces, all of them smiling, all of them watching me with eyes that had turned completely black, no whites, no iris, just endless darkness where my eyes should have been, and all of them in perfect unison mouthed the same word, pronto. I swept up the glass with shaking hands. I threw it in the garbage. I covered the empty mirror frame with a towel and tried to convince myself that what I had seen was a hallucination, a product of stress and fear and sleepless nights. Then my phone buzzed. My new phone. The one I bought 3 days ago with a new number, a number that nobody knows except my employer and a handful of acquaintances. I had not even programmed any contacts into it yet. The screen lit up with a notification, a text message, from a contact I had not added, a contact that should not exist. Mom. The message was simple, just a few lines of text glowing on the screen. Marcos, my son, I know you are reading this. I know you are afraid, but you do not need to be afraid. All you need to do is accept what has already happened. You let me in that night on the mountain. You opened the door, and I walked through. We are bound now. I will always be with you. You can run, you can hide. You can cover every mirror and burn every photograph and surround yourself with light until the end of your days. But eventually the light will fail. The bulbs will burn out, the power will cut. And when the darkness comes, I will be there, waiting. The way I have always been waiting. The way I will always wait. Below the message was a single word separated from the rest by a line of empty space. Pronto. I am telling you this story for a reason. Not because I want you to believe me. I know how this sounds. I know that if I were listening to someone else tell this story, I would think they were crazy. I would think they were making it up for attention, or that they had experienced some kind of mental break, or that they were simply lying. But I need you to hear this. I need someone to know what happened to me, in case I am not around to tell the story myself much longer. And I need to warn you. If you ever find yourself driving alone at night on a dark road in the mountains, far from any town or gas station or sign of human habitation, remember what I'm about to tell you. If you hear something on the roof of your vehicle, do not stop. If you see something standing by the side of the road, do not look. If someone calls your name, even if it sounds like someone you love, someone you have lost, someone you would give anything to hear from one more time, do not answer. These are the rules, the old rules. The rules that have existed since before the roads were paved, since before the trucks and the cars, since before any of us were born. Break them, and you will open a door that can never be closed. Break them, and something will come through. Break them, and you will spend the rest of your life, however long that might be, knowing that you are never truly alone, that something is watching you from every shadow, that something is waiting for the moment when the light fails. I have to go now. The sun is setting, and I need to make sure all the lights are working. I need to check the bulbs. I need to make sure the darkness cannot get in. But before I go, I have one question for you. Have you ever heard knocking at 3 in the morning? Knocking that comes from inside your walls, from above your ceiling, from somewhere that nothing should be able to reach. Have you ever looked in a mirror and seen your reflection do something you did not do? Have you ever felt in the deepest part of your soul that something was watching you from the darkness, waiting for you to make a mistake? If you have, I want to know. Leave a comment. Tell me your story, because I am starting to think that I am not the only one. I am starting to think that this thing, whatever it is, has been doing this for a very long time to a lot of people, and most of them never got the chance to warn anyone else. Maybe together we can figure out what it is. Maybe together we can find a way to stop it. Or maybe it is already too late for all of us. The lights in my apartment just flickered. I need to go check on them, but before I do, I want you to remember one thing. Whatever you do, do not look behind you right now. Do not turn around. Do not check the shadows in the corner of your room. Because if you feel something there, if you feel that prickle on the back of your neck that tells you something is watching, then it might already be too late. It might already be inside, and once it is inside, it stays forever. Trust me, I know. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. It is here.